There is a movement happening in South Korea that a lot of people outside of Asia have not heard about yet, but I think it deserves an honest conversation. It is called the 4B movement. The name comes from four Korean words that all start with the sound B, which means no or without. The four things women in this movement are saying no to are heterosexual dating, heterosexual relationships, heterosexual marriage, and having children. All four. Completely. Not as a temporary break, not as a phase, but as a deliberate, considered life choice made by a growing number of South Korean women who decided that the traditional path being offered to them was simply not working for them anymore. Now, before anyone clicks away thinking this is just radical feminist content, I want to ask you to stay with me for a few minutes. Because whether you agree with this movement or not, the reasons behind it tell a very important story. Not just about South Korea, about Asia in general. And honestly, about some things I have lived through myself as a Filipino woman who is almost 40, living alone, and who made her own version of this decision long before she ever heard the term 4B. Let me tell you what this is actually about, because the headlines about it tend to miss the real depth of why it exists. South Korea is one of the most economically developed countries in Asia. It has incredible technology, a strong entertainment industry, and a very educated population. But underneath all of that, it also has some of the most intense gender inequality in the developed world. South Korean women consistently face a wide gap between what they are expected to contribute to a household, a marriage, and a family, and what they receive in return. The country has one of the largest gender pay gaps among wealthy nations. Women are expected to manage the home, raise children, and often continue working, while also being responsible for the emotional labor of the entire family. And when marriages do not work out, women frequently end up in worse financial and social positions than their male counterparts. So when women in South Korea started saying, you know what, I am stepping off this path entirely, it was not a random or extreme reaction. It was a logical response to a system that had been asking too much and giving back too little for a very long time. The financial reasons alone are significant. Getting married in South Korea is expensive. Not just the wedding itself, but the expectation of housing, which is extraordinarily costly in cities like Seoul. Raising children is also expensive, and South Korea actually has one of the lowest birth rates in the entire world right now, which is directly connected to young people, especially women, doing the math and deciding the numbers do not add up. When you factor in the career interruptions that often come with motherhood, the unpaid labor of running a household, and the social pressure to perform a version of femininity that requires constant maintenance, many women are concluding that the cost of traditional family life is simply higher than the benefit. And honestly, I get it. I really do. I am not Korean. My perspective comes from my own life, from conversations I have had with students from Japan and South Korea over the years, and from watching what has happened to women around me here in the Philippines. But the core issues being named by the 4B movement are not uniquely Korean. They are deeply familiar across Asia, and in many ways across the world. Let me tell you a little bit about where I am coming from personally, because I think context matters when someone talks about a topic like this. I grew up in a chaotic household. My father struggled with alcohol, and my mother had serious mental health challenges that made our home environment unstable and sometimes unsafe. I watched my parents' relationship up close for years, and what I saw did not make me want to replicate it. I saw what it looked like when two people who were not well, who had not healed, who did not have the tools to communicate or repair things, stayed together anyway, and what that environment did to the children inside it. I carried that with me. I still carry it. When I was in my 20s, I made a quiet decision. Not loudly, not as a political statement, just privately, to myself. I decided I was not going to enter into a relationship or create a family until I was genuinely sure I was ready, that I had done enough healing, that I was not going to pass on the same patterns I grew up inside of. And somewhere along the way, almost 40 arrived, and I am still here alone with my dogs, working from home, building something small and quiet for myself. And most days, that feels like the right choice for me. I am not saying everyone should make the same choice. I am saying the choice deserves respect. Now let me talk about some of the other reasons people, not just Korean women but women across Asia, are opting out of traditional relationship and family paths. Because it is never just one thing. Personal autonomy is a big one. More women than ever before are educated, financially independent, and aware of their own worth. When you have built a career, developed your own identity, and experienced what it feels like to make your own decisions without having to compromise with someone else at every turn, the idea of entering into a relationship where those freedoms might shrink requires a very compelling reason. For some women, the right person and the right relationship provides that reason. For others, the calculation simply does not come out in favor of partnering up. Religious and cultural pressure plays a significant role too, especially in countries like the Philippines where religious communities can be very tight and very involved in members' personal lives. I have seen women in my own community who stayed single for years, not by choice but because their religious environment disapproved of any relationship that did not meet very specific standards. Some of them reached their late 30s or early 40s and suddenly felt a kind of panic, a sense of running out of time, that led them to make rushed decisions that did not serve them well. I want to say something to anyone in that situation. A decision made from panic and scarcity is rarely a good one. It is better to choose nothing than to choose badly out of fear. The biological clock conversation is real, and it deserves to be addressed honestly rather than used as a scare tactic. Yes, women's fertility does decline with age, and that is a biological reality that exists regardless of anyone's feelings about it. But the way this fact is often used in conversations about women's choices as a kind of threat or countdown is not helpful or honest. What matters is that women have accurate information and the freedom to make their own decisions with that information, not that they are pressured into choices they are not ready for because someone else is uncomfortable with their timeline. If you are a woman in your late 30s or early 40s who is now thinking about whether you want a partner or children, that is a legitimate moment to assess honestly. Not to panic. To assess. What do you actually want? Not what your family wants for you, not what your religion says you should want, not what your social circle seems to expect. What do you, when you sit quietly with yourself, actually want your life to look like? That answer might surprise you. And whatever it is, it deserves to be honored rather than argued with. The conversation around marriage and long-term partnerships is also worth examining carefully rather than accepting uncritically. The idea that being in a relationship is automatically better than being alone is something most of us absorb, without questioning it. But the reality is more complicated. Relationships require work, compromise, emotional labor, and a consistent willingness to prioritize someone else alongside yourself. When that work is reciprocal and the relationship is genuinely healthy, the rewards can be profound. But a significant portion of long-term partnerships are not genuinely healthy. They are simply functional enough that people stay in them, because leaving feels harder than adjusting to the discomfort of staying. That is not a great advertisement for the institution. I have seen women stay in relationships that were draining them because they feared being alone more than they feared being diminished. I have seen others leave and discover that the life they built for themselves afterward was quieter, more grounded, and more genuinely theirs than anything they had experienced inside the relationship. Both paths exist. Neither is guaranteed to bring happiness. But choosing the solo path deliberately with awareness and intention is a very different thing from ending up alone because nothing worked out. The 4B movement is extreme in its scope, and I think most women, even those who understand and sympathize with the reasons behind it, will not adopt all 4 of its principles. But what it represents, the idea that women have the right to consciously evaluate what traditional expectations cost them and decide for themselves whether those costs are worth paying, is not extreme at all. It is just honest. And I think honesty is what most of these conversations are missing. The honest acknowledgement that marriage and children are not automatic guarantees of happiness or security. The honest acknowledgement that being single is not a failure or a waiting room for a real life. The honest acknowledgement that different women in different circumstances with different histories will arrive at different conclusions, and that all of those conclusions deserve respect if they were reached thoughtfully. For me, this life, the quiet one, the solo one, the one with dogs and early mornings and work that is entirely my own, is the one that makes the most sense given everything I have lived through and everything I know about myself. I did not arrive here by accident. I arrived here by paying attention. Whatever you are considering for your own life, I hope you give yourself the same courtesy. Pay attention. Ask the honest questions. And trust the answers you find when you are not performing for anyone else's expectations. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, subscribe to help me hit my 2,000 video goal. This is my unfiltered diary of solo living in the Philippines, from the tough days in the ESL classroom to my journey learning Japanese and Korean. Yes, I am still a beginner. If you would like to support my work and my retirement fund, check out the Buy a Treat for My Pets link in the description. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thanks for being part of the journey.
See you then.